Ever quit a habit around day 19 or 20 and thought, I guess this just isn't for me? I need you to stop scrolling. Because you didn't fail. You were lied to. For decades, you've been told it takes 21 days to build a habit. That number has never been proven by a single scientific study. Not one. It's not an estimate, not a rounded down average. It's a myth that escaped from a 1960s plastic surgery book and somehow took over the entire self-improvement industry. And the real number? It's not just bigger. It's a range so wide it'll change how you think about every habit you've ever tried and failed to build. Millions of people have quit on a habit at day 19 or 20, telling themselves they failed, when in reality, they were never even close to the finish line. So where did this number come from? And what does the actual research say? Let's break it down. Where the 21-day myth actually came from. The number traces back to a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz, who in the 1960s noticed something interesting about his patients. After surgery, it took them roughly 21 days to stop feeling their old face and adjust to their new one. He also observed that amputees took about 3 weeks to stop sensing a phantom limb. Maltz wrote about this observation in his 1960 book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and he was careful to frame it as a minimum, an approximate adjustment period for the mind to catch up with a physical change. But here's the problem. That's not a habit study. That's a personal clinical observation about adapting to a new body image. Somewhere along the way, self-help authors picked up 21 days and stripped away all the nuance. And it takes a minimum of about 21 days to adjust, quietly morphed into it takes exactly 21 days to form a habit. No one ever tested that claim. It just got repeated until it sounded true. So what happens when scientists actually study this properly? The real research. Philippa Lally's UCL study. In 2009, health psychologist Philippa Lally and her team at University College London ran one of the most cited studies on habit formation in existence. They tracked 96 people over 12 weeks as each person chose a new habit. Drinking water with lunch, running for 15 minutes before dinner, eating a piece of fruit with breakfast, and recorded every single day whether the behaviour felt automatic, meaning they did it without having to think about it. The result that broke the internet's favourite statistic. On average, it took 66 days for a behaviour to become automatic. Not 21, 66. And that average hides something even more important: the range. Some participants formed their habit in as little as 18 days. Others took up to 254 days. That's nearly 9 months for the behaviour to become genuinely automatic. That spread isn't a rounding error. It's the entire point. Why some habits take so much longer than others. The reason for that massive range comes down to a concept Lally's research highlighted. Complexity and consistency matter more than time itself. Drinking a glass of water with lunch is a low-effort, low-friction behaviour. Your brain can automate it relatively fast because there's almost nothing to resist. But going for a run before dinner requires more planning, more physical effort, and more willpower to override the part of your brain that would rather sit on the couch. The harder the habit is to execute, the longer your basal ganglia, the brain region responsible for automating behaviour, needs to build that neural pathway. There's also a second factor. Missing a day here or there didn't actually destroy people's progress in the study. Occasional slip-ups had minimal impact on the overall habit formation process, as long as the person got back on track relatively soon. Your brain isn't keeping a strict attendance record. It's slowly reinforcing a pattern through repetition, and that pattern can absorb the occasional gap without resetting to 0. So if 21 days isn't the real number, and 66 days is just an average, what should you actually do with this information? 3 practical takeaways. First, stop measuring your habits in days and start measuring them in repetitions. The question isn't, have I done this for 3 weeks? It's, how many times have I actually done this in any context? Frequency drives automation, not the calendar. Second, pick the easiest possible version of the habit when you're starting out. Lally's data essentially shows that simple, low-friction behaviours automate faster. If you want to build a reading habit, read 1 page will become automatic far sooner than read 30 minutes, because there's less internal resistance to overcome every single time. Third, expect a long runway, and don't quit when it doesn't feel automatic yet, because it's not supposed to, not for a while. Most people abandon new habits in week 3 or 4, precisely because they were promised automaticity at day 21. And when it doesn't show up, they assume something is wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just on a 66 to 250 day timeline, not a 21-day one. And that is completely normal. Understanding the real science here isn't just trivia. It's the difference between quitting right before the habit would have stuck and pushing through because you actually know what's coming. Your brain doesn't run on a 21-day cycle. It runs on repetition, simplicity, and patience. If this changed how you think about your own habits, subscribe. We break down myths like this every week. And let us know in the comments, what's a habit you gave up on too early because you thought you'd failed the 21-day rule?